and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. I'm Josh.
And I'm Ari.
And today we're going to be going over a book, or more so a collection of connected stories, more so they're episodic, that Ari selected. This is Secret of the Pink Pokemon by Tracey West, and it's part of the Pokemon anime series.
Yep.
You have a discussion starter, Ari?
So, this, for those of you who watch Pokemon, this is the written version, which is also a little bit slightly different, but of 3 stories in the Orange Islands trilogy called The Crystal Onyx, In the Pink, and Snack Attack, which we'll be going over a little bit as we continue. This one I chose because it didn't really have any battling in it, and I wanted to come up with an adventure story, not like a battle story. So I chose Secret of the Pink Pokemon, but overall, Tracey West's renditions of the anime in writing is just so interesting that I wanted to share it with Josh and the rest of the Gladiators. So my discussion starter would be, what did you think of it, Josh? Like, were there any particular parts of the story that you felt was interested? Was there anything that intrigued you? Anything?
To be quite honest, I didn't like it. It was an interesting take to go from television to print, because you have from print to screen. You have
Right.
From this case, it's taking episodes of Pokemon and translating them into written works so that kids are able to read it as well, and maybe it'll get them into reading.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was a good effort, but unfortunately, it didn't really translate well. I'm a non-enthusiast. I collected Pokemon cards for a short period of time.
Which are always good, by the way.
I have to see how much mine are worth. I just have to dig them up. I didn't really feel engaged, or I didn't feel inclined to get into the series. They try to make it so that somebody that's a non-enthusiast, or somebody that doesn't know as much, is able to...
Yeah, it's
Get
definitely
engaged.
more for younger readers.
It's more for younger, but I don't even think that because I think that the ones that are approaching it are going to be, if they're going to approach it, they're going to be enthusiasts. And I don't think that they are going to respond well to the way that they're being spoken down to.
You mean the enthusiasts?
The enthusiasts are being spoken down as far as the series
I think
is
a lot of
concerned.
that spoken downness has to do with the fact that it is from screen to print, and it's really hard to rewrite something that's already been put on television in a non-spoken down way. In general, like if you think about it. Not movies, but like...
I mean, a lot of the people, I think... Because usually with the show, I know SpongeBob did the same thing. I think even Rugrats have done something of this nature, that they went from where they turned it in when they took an episode. Even Sesame Street did it with the Mr. Hooper, episode 1839, with Mr. Hooper's death.
Right.
They'll show a picture, caption over here.
Yeah, those are pictures from the actual show.
I wasn't engaged. It's not something that made me say, "Wow, I want to watch more Pokemon."
Yeah, each story is also individualized. You can clearly tell that it goes 1, 2, 3 instead of like a whole story. It's clearly 3. It's basically the essential equivalent of 3 short stories rather than one big story. So if you lay it out like that, where instead of it being a book, that it's 3 short stories into one. I'm curious what you thought of the content. Like, which of the stories did you think... I mean, I know you're saying you didn't really care for how it was written, but the content of it, what did you think of the content? And then I'll go after you're done.
I think in a way that they were somewhat connected. It was some sort of connection as far as they were going on very similar adventures.
Which is why I chose it, because most of the Orange Islands books would have contained battles, and I think you would have disliked it even more. I mean, I really appreciate reading the adventure stories better than the battle stories, because the battle stories are just the same dialogue and the same actions over and over again. But when you have the adventure ones, it actually puts a little bit more of a spin on it. And Tracey West has written a lot of different, not just Pokemon, but also some other series as well. And I think she writes adventure a lot better than just linear battle style or linear styles.
The first one seemed to be the most complexly structured, but
The Crystal Onyx?
Yeah, but it seemed
it's
more,
also my favorite as well.
It felt probably the most engaging, because it was it gave you more to think about.
It also was the one that probably had the least to do with Pokemon themselves and more about the humans around them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that one had to do, the Crystal Onyx had to do with a guy who had lost his spark for art. and he needed some kind of spark to get his. And they went on an adventure to find the crystal onyx to give him that spark, which is very different from the other two stories, where it's more about like the Pokemon and the wildlife around them, which is very different.
And they were also more engaged in their, like, Ash was looking to find more Pokeballs. Mm-hmm. The second one was what I thought would be the driving force, and it really wasn't, where they eat the berries and become pink.
Yeah, I will say, I think the episode in the pink is better watched than it was in the book. But I think with the Crystal Onyx, I think it was written better than it's actually in the anime. And I think that of the three stories, I think the Crystal Onyx is the strongest.
Probably because it probably lends itself better to print than it does to action. The battle with the Snorlax was a little bit ridiculous.
Interesting. Yeah, that one.
And when you have
basically you have a Snorlax who's a really this fat Pokemon right here, and he's eating all the grapefruits on a grapefruit like island, and he's on a rampage, basically eating everything.
And the way that they insert Jigglypuff is very.
That's a very TV anime.
I think that that made me think that the Pokemon themselves are very one-dimensional.
So what you have to understand, because you didn't watch any animes, that Jigglypuff is a recurring character.
I know that Jigglypuff is recurring.
He'll or she'll or whatever will just pop out of nowhere just as a plot device, just to put people to sleep.
And just to sing Jigglypuff, Jigglypuff, Jigglypuff.
Yeah, Jigglypuff, Jigglypuff.
Very much, to me, it came off as very Teletubby-esque.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
The most fascinating part about the Pokemon universe is how many different kinds of Pokemon and how dimensional they're laid out. But when you actually examine the way that a Pokemon reacts, there really isn't much to them. They just say their name.
Yeah, I really like Pokemon not because of their names, to say their names, but like just because they're like pals, they're friends. You can tell them, you can share them with them what to do. And I think that is why, like, with specifically with the Crystal Onyx, but also a little bit within the pink, is that it shows what Pokemon do in the wild, how it talks about, like, being able to see them from a safe distance, and then when you interfere with that, like in the pink, it can cause problems. I will admit that Snack Attack is a very weak story. I never really particularly cared for it, but the other two I think are strong enough that they can put into a book. I think what Tracey West is trying to do is trying to get it directly from the anime to the book, but I think it might have been a little bit better to stretch out the story a little bit and make it more accessible, but as it is actually pretty accessible, but like to not make it like you were talking about that, what was the book, the Hanged book?
Born to be Hanged.
Born to be Hanged. Like you were talking about how it was like a piece of information, a piece of information, a piece of information instead of a coherent story. In a way, this is kind of the same thing. It's like a couple of pieces of information and a coherent story, and then a break, and then another one, and then another one. So in a way, it is written similarly, I would think.
I think it's probably somewhat similar to a place I used to like to visit, Leaning's Run Gardens, where it used to be just different garden after different garden, and the hummingbirds used to own the gardens.
Right. But it's all in one place.
It's all in one place, yes.
Yeah.
In this case, a universe.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a minute about the translation from anime to text, because I know you have not seen the anime episodes. Personally, I feel that this is almost spot on to what the anime does. Mm-hmm. Again, I think the Crystal Onyx is the strongest when it comes from anime to text. It's the most accurate. I think In the Pink is missing some stuff from the anime that isn't, because they only have a certain amount of pages probably that they're able to write, that Tracey's able to write. The Snack Attack, I just never liked that episode to begin with. Having it in the book wasn't going to make it any better. I was hoping that In the Pink would be a little bit stronger than it turned out to be. I was hoping that it would have more of an emphasis on the fact that they are wild Pokemon. They are free, and that they should be free. And I do like the lesson it comes across where it talks about, like, making sure everything is kept free and not disturbed. I did like that lesson. And with the Crystal Onyx, I think it was really good that you had a character development, which was nice.
I mean,
character development, but their character development.
I mean, I'm approaching it as a reader rather than as a viewer of the series. But as a reader, it didn't do anything for me.
Yeah. It is definitely difficult to get into these books if you haven't watched the anime. Interestingly enough, the stories themselves are they're a little more empty because there's just not enough room, and it's also because it's a juvenile kids book, so it's more for younger audiences.
I mean,
but it was good nostalgia in either way.
But yet I've seen works for younger audiences that have been able to do more than this.
That's easy trying to cram 3 stories into one book. It's very difficult with only a limited amount of pages. I mean,
it's doable, especially as long as she didn't have a limit from the publisher, then she would be able to put forth as many as she wanted.
Like I said, rank-wise, Crystal Onyx is my favorite story in this. Out of the 3 individual stories. Like I said, I love the character development of the character. I love that they go exploring. They use their Pokemon to find something. Like, there was the Pokemon Meryl who had the radar ears and the Venonat that had the radar eyes. I think that was good. I think the way it was written, that had the best pacing. It still wasn't great, but it was like the best pacing of the 3. Something tells me that because that episode is probably the best of the 3, it also translates to text the best as well, because there's a lot of content in it. In the Pink is so-so. I think it was, the episode itself I think is really good, but it was hard to translate it onto the page. And like I said with Snack Attack, I was never a fan of it in the first place.
I would agree with you. It would be 1, 2, 3 as far as the ranking is concerned.
Yeah, as it went on, it didn't get much better.
But my overall ranking is lower because of the inability to keep concentration. I didn't feel that there was much of to me, they were just characters from a TV show. And I didn't make that connection.
It's also hard because you probably don't know because you didn't watch the anime and you haven't read the other books, you don't know, like, the characters aren't fleshed out in this one because they assume you already know about the characters and what their backstories are.
They feel that you need to know, but yet they feel that you're approaching it that you already know. They're trying to attract to both, but yet I don't think they're able.
Would you be in agreement if I said this book would probably be more enjoyable for someone who's more of an enthusiast of Pokemon rather than a reader who just picks it up and says, "Oh, I'm reading"?
Honestly, I don't think it's really that good for anybody, because I think that the enthusiast is feeling like they're being spoken down to, whereas the person that's a non-enthusiast doesn't have any reason to want to go ahead with the series. In this case, you pretty much have to decide which direction you want to go.
Also, this is further along in the story. The very first story in this series is called I Choose You, which really opens up everything, and you kind of have to read them in order. But this one, again, I chose this one because A, I wanted the nostalgia of a Pokemon book for the channel, and B is because it's more of an adventure than a battle. And I'm telling you, if you didn't really care for this, the battles would have been worse, because it would have just been repeated text over and over again. At least with this one, you get some semblance of story.
You ready to rate?
Yeah. So it's hard for me to rate the story all in one. So I guess I'll just go with the average of whatever it turns out to be. So Crystal Onyx, I'd give a 4. I really liked Crystal Onyx. In the Pink, I'd probably give a 3. And Snack Attack, I'd give like a 1.5. So the average of that would be 8.5 divided by 3 is what?
That's about a little more than 2.5.
Yeah, so I'd give it somewhere between 2.5 and 3 as an average. But I feel that of the 3 stories in this book, Crystal Onyx is definitely the strongest. And I just wish it was a standalone, because that one, as a standalone with a lot more stuff in it, obviously it wouldn't be called Secret of the Pink Pokemon that way, but I think if you write Crystal Onyx as like a 150 page book, I think it could be a lot more accessible, and if you like add backstories to the characters and stuff.
Perhaps if they built upon it, then, or if they created a story that was just exclusively for print.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that people can be engaged in a new adventure.
Yeah, and then in the Pink, I think it was better as an episode. I think the way it was written, it was all right, but it skipped a lot of stuff. And even if as a new reader, because it skips stuff, you get confused. I'd average it to about 2 point. I can't do points, can I? It would be between 2.5 and 3 for me.
I'm going to give it a 2. It's not fulfilling or satisfying to any kind of reader. I don't think that it does enough to flesh out the characters. I think that everybody that approaches it is going to be disappointed in one way or the other. It can be challenging to go from television to print. I know that there's plenty of franchises that have been able to just do a print work, like Star Wars and Star Trek even. Yeah, there's plenty of.
So are you trying to say that the writing is poor but the content is accessible, or are you trying to say that both of them are not really accessible?
Everything misses the mark. Because I think that, to me, the writing is trying to do everything but does nothing. The content does not make me want to get into the Pokemon universe. It doesn't make me want to be in the
Which goes back
universe.
to what you said about people who are already in the Pokemon universe might like it, but the way that it's written,
yes,
kind of shoots that down. Now, I didn't get that feeling, the one about being talked down to. Like, I'm a Pokemon enthusiast. I did not get that feeling. But again, that might be because I already know what to expect.
That perhaps may be the case. And there's probably people that will just enjoy it because it's Pokemon.
Yeah, and that's why kids enjoy it so much. I mean, I would say that if you have young kids who enjoy Pokemon and who are like kindergarten, first, second, third grade and have relatively short attention spans at the time, I think that's like exactly what this is going for. I would recommend the book to that age group. I only suggested it to literary gladiators for nostalgia purposes and also because I wanted to see how Josh would react to it, honestly. And I know Dan wanted to do it, but he wasn't able to. I think that overall, reading it again, it definitely is directed more towards the kids. And I think that just having an occasional kids book on the show is always a good thing. It's a good variety.
I agree with that aspect, but I think there's far many better kids' books. And here's my copy of Secret of the Pink Pokemon.
And here is mine, which comes from my school's library. This is the hardcover. That's the soft cover. And if you're interested in this book, or if you have any kids who might be interested in this book, you can find this pretty much anywhere. You can find it. I don't know where you found your copy.
I got mine online.
You got yours online. I know you can probably find it in Barnes & Noble if you look in the right one, but online might be the best way to go. The story, like I said, and like Josh mentioned, it isn't very full with stuff, but it's good for, kids who are still learning to read and are interested in Pokemon. Yeah. Like I said, the reason I chose this book, pure nostalgia. That's really, I wasn't expecting too much out of this, but it was nice to come up with something that was very nostalgic for me. Just wanted to see what Josh thought about it. And that's why I kind of chose it. I think that this would be a good book for kindergarten to third grade.
Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel. If you like what you see, please subscribe for more. If you really like what you see, please support us on our Patreon. For now, and as always, we encourage you to keep reading.